Welcome to Byte-Sized Tech, where we blend casual conversations with insightful discussions on the latest in technology and gadgets.
Hey, everyone.
You know, buying a new TV these days, it can feel really overwhelming, Ken.
Oh, absolutely. It's like alphabet soup.
Totally. You walk into a store or even just browse online, and you're hit with QD, miniLED, Neo-QLED, OLED, direct lit LED. It's just confusing.
Yeah, you just want a good picture, right? Not a technical manual. People get pretty frustrated, and honestly, I get it.
Exactly. So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to break down all this TV tech floating around for 2025.
The goal is, by the end of this, you'll actually understand what these terms mean.
Right, and feel, confident when you actually go to buy one. Make the right choice for you.
And fundamentally, it boils down to two main camps, really. You've got LCD, which everyone pretty much calls LED TVs now.
Okay.
And then you have OLED. Most of those other acronyms are just variations on these two basic types.
Gotcha. So let's start with the most common one then, LCD or LED TVs. You mentioned there are sort of 5 main flavors.
Yeah, basically 5 fundamental approaches under that LCD LED umbrella. We've got edge lit,
Okay.
direct lit, full array local dimming or FALD,
FALD.
and
Yeah.
QLED, and finally mini-LED.
All right, let's take them one by one. Edge lit, what's the deal there? Sounds simple.
It is simple, maybe too simple sometimes. The LEDs, the lights, they're just along the edges of the screen, maybe top and bottom, maybe the sides.
Huh. So the light has to spread across the whole panel from the sides?
Exactly. And, well, that's where the problems start. You often get uneven brightness, like brighter edges and maybe a dimmer center.
Yeah, I can picture that. Not ideal.
Not ideal. Plus, all the heat is generated right there at the edges, which isn't great for the lifespan of those LEDs. They could potentially fail sooner.
Okay, so edge lit sounds like maybe one to avoid, even if it's cheaper.
Generally, yeah. It was popular for making TVs really thin, but the picture quality trade-offs, probably not worth the savings these days. We'd say steer clear if you can.
Good tip. All right, moving on. Direct lit. This sounds more logical. Lights directly behind the screen.
It is. You've got a grid of LEDs spread out right behind the entire LCD panel.
Okay, so that should mean more even brightness, right?
Definitely better brightness and much better uniformity compared to edge lit. Less chance of those weird blotchy spots. And the heat is spread out better too.
So where does a direct lit TV fit in? Is it a good budget option?
It's a solid baseline, yeah. If you're on a tight budget or need a TV for somewhere less critical like the garage, a spare room, maybe an RV, it's perfectly fine. Bright enough does the job.
But there's a catch, I assume?
The main weakness is contrast and black levels. Because the LEDs behind the screen are usually controlled in pretty big groups, it struggles to get really deep, dark blacks next to bright areas.
Right. Okay, so good for basic viewing, but maybe not for movie night in a dark room.
Probably not your main home theater screen, no. Which leads us nicely to the next step up. Full array, local dimming, FALD.
FALD. This sounds more advanced. What's the local dimming part mean?
So it's still a grid of LEDs behind the screen, like direct lit. But crucially, that grid is divided into lots of separate zones.
Zones, okay.
And each of these zones can be dimmed independently or even turned completely off.
So if you have a dark part of the picture, the lights behind that specific part can actually turn off.
Exactly. Think of like the moon in a black night sky. The LEDs behind the moon can be bright, but the LEDs behind the black sky around it can dim way down or switch off.
Okay, that sounds like it would make a huge difference for contrast. Getting real blacks next to bright things.
It's a massive improvement. Dramatically better black levels, much higher contrast. The picture just has more punch, more depth.
So FALD is a feature worth paying a bit extra for if the budget stretches.
Absolutely. If you can find a TV with FLE in your price range, it's generally a very worthwhile upgrade. Really boosts the viewing experience.
Cool. Okay, next up, QLED. This term is everywhere. Samsung pushes it hard, but others use it too. What are we actually talking about?
QLED stands for quantum dot LED. The key here is quantum dots. They're these incredibly tiny semiconductor particles.
Quantum dots. Sounds like sci-fi.
Kind of does. But what they do is, when the blue light from the LEDs hits them, they emit very pure red and green light. So you add a layer of these quantum dots.
On top of the LED backlight.
Essentially, yes, between the backlight and the LCD panel. And this layer helps the TV produce brighter images and a wider range of colors. More vibrant, more saturated colors.
So it's enhancing the light before it goes through the LCD pixels.
Precisely. Now, it gets a bit confusing because brands have their own names for it. QLED is common, but you'll see TCL just say QD, Houston says ULED.
Oh yeah, ULED.
Samsung uses Neo-QLED, which usually combines quantum dots with many LEs, which we'll get to. Sony has Triluminous. LG uses QNED sometimes.
Wow, okay. Marketing department's working overtime. But the core tech is quantum dots, improving color and brightness.
That's the gist of it, yes. And it's especially good for HDR content. High dynamic range. Dolby Vision, too.
Which is most streaming stuff now, right?
Right.
Netflix, Disney Plus, Joan, etc.
Yep. That extra brightness and wider color from quantum dots really helps make that HDR content pop like it's supposed to.
Okay, makes sense. QLED and its cousins is better color and brightness. Now, the last one in the LCD LED family, miniLED. These sound small.
They are. Mini LEDs are just much, much smaller versions of the regular LEDs used in backlights.
Like significantly smaller.
Yeah, and because they're tiny, you can pack way more of them behind the screen. Thousands, even tens of thousands.
Whoa. And I guess if you have more LEDs, you can have more dimming zones too, like FLAD on steroids.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to think about it. Way more LEDs and way more individual dimming zones, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of zones.
So that gives you even finer control over the brightness and darkness across the screen.
Much finer control. You get even brighter highlights, better black levels than standard FALD, and less blooming or halo effect around bright objects on dark backgrounds.
Okay, so miniLED is basically the top tier for LCD LED tech right now, often paired with quantum dots, you said.
That's right. Most of the really high-end LED TVs you see advertised these days are mini LED, and they almost always have quantum dots too, like Samsung's Neo QLED or LG's QN8 mini LEDs. Best of both LCD worlds.
And are these strictly super expensive, or is mini-L becoming more mainstream?
It started out pricey, but definitely becoming more accessible. Brands like TCL and Hisense have really brought mini-LED down to more mid-range price points. You don't have to spend a fortune anymore.
That's really good to know. Okay, so that covers the whole LCD LED spectrum, from basic edge lit up to fancy mini-L QLEDs. Let's switch to the other main category, OLED.
Right, OLED, organic light emitting diode.
And the big difference here is no backlight at all.
Correct. That's the fundamental distinction. In an OLED TV, each individual pixel creates its own light when it gets an electrical current. It's self-emissive.
So every single tiny dot on the screen can turn itself on or off.
Exactly. On, off, or anywhere in between. And because a pixel can turn completely off, it emits zero light. That's how you get perfect black levels. Infinite contrast, essentially.
Ah, okay. That's the magic of OLED contrast everyone talks about. And because there's no backlight layer,
They can be incredibly thin, like crazy thin designs.
yeah, they look amazing. Now, OLEDs always seemed like the super premium, expensive option. Is that still true heading into 2025?
They are still generally more expensive than mini LCDs, yes. But the prices have come down quite a bit over the years. They're much more attainable now than they used to be.
Okay. And just like LCD, there are different types of OLED too.
Yep, a few main ones to know for 2025. The most common is WOLED, then there's a newer one called 4-stack or tandem OLED, and also QD OLED.
WOLED, what's the W for?
The W stands for white. These OLED panels add a white subpixel alongside the usual red, green, and blue subpixels for each pixel,
Why add white?
primarily to boost the overall brightness. Early OLEDs weren't quite as bright as LCDs, so adding that white subpixel helped close the gap.
Gotcha. So WOLED is kind of the standard baseline OLED tech now.
Pretty much. You find it in lots of great TVs, like the LG B series and C series, so the B5 and C5 for 2025. Some of Samsung's OLEDs that aren't the top QD models, Sony's Bravia 8. It's a very mature, excellent technology.
So even standard WOLED gives you that amazing contrast and picture quality.
Oh, absolutely. Perfect blacks, vibrant colors, wide viewing angles.
Yeah.
It's still fantastic picture quality, a great starting point for OLED.
Okay. Now QD OLED. We heard QD with QLED, quantum dots again.
Quantum dots again, yes, but used differently here. In QD OLED, you typically have a blue OLED light source,
Okay.
and then layers of quantum dots that convert that blue light into pure red and pure green light. There's no white subpixel needed.
Huh. So it's using the quantum dots instead of color filters or a white subpixel to create the final colors.
Exactly. The idea is to get even purer, more vibrant colors and potentially higher brightness in those colors compared to WOLED, especially in the highlights.
And how do these QD OLEDs stack up? Are they considered better than WOLED?
They've been very highly rated, yes. Often praised for superior color volume and brightness. They've also become more price competitive recently.
Which TVs use QD OLED?
Think Samsung's S95 series, some of their S90 series models, and Sony's high-end A95L from last year, which might carry over or have a successor, they're generally positioned as top-tier options.
Right. Okay, so WOLED is great. QD-OLED is maybe even better for color and brightness. What's this third one? Four-stack or tandem OLED?
This is a newer evolution, primarily pushed by LG Display, for panels used in TVs like LG's G series, so the G5 for 2025, and the new Panasonic Z95B.
Four-stack. What does that mean? Stacking layers?
Essentially, yeah, it's a more complex structure within the WOLED framework. They basically stack multiple layers of the organic light-emitting materials.
And the benefit of stacking them is?
Significantly increased brightness and efficiency, and potentially longer lifespan, too. The aim is to push WOLED brightness levels even higher, putting it right up there, competing directly with QD-OLED at the very high end.
So another way to get super bright, punchy OLED performance.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's basically giving consumers two potential paths to top-tier OLED picture quality, QD-OLED, or this new, brighter four-stack WOLED.
Interesting. So if you want the absolute best picture money can buy in 2025, you're probably looking at QD-OLED or one of these four-stack OLEDs.
That seems to be the consensus. Yes, those represent the current pinnacle. But there is one catch, particularly with size.
Size limitations.
Yeah, at the moment, these absolute top-tier OLED panels, the QD-OLEDs and the four-stack ones, they tend to max out around 77 inches, maybe 83 inches for some models.
So if you want a truly giant screen, like 90-plus inches.
You can get OLEDs. The big LG makes a 97-inch one, for example, but those currently use the standard WOLED technology, not the latest QD or four-stack versions.
Huh. So there's potentially a trade-off between getting the absolute cutting-edge panel tech and getting the absolute largest screen size, even with a big budget.
Precisely. It's something to be aware of. If you're aiming for both maximum size and maximum picture quality, you might have to choose which is more important right now.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, this has been super helpful. Let's try and distill this down into some quick takeaways for someone heading out to buy a TV.
Sure. So if your budget is really tight and you just need something basic and bright.
Direct lit LED is probably okay. Garage TV territory.
Right. If you can spend a little more for a noticeable picture improvement in an LED TV.
Look for full array local dimming, FALD. Better contrast.
Yep. For a really solid daily driver, great picture quality, good with HDR.
QLED or ULED, triluminous, whatever the brand calls their quantum.TV.
Exactly. If you want the best possible picture from an LCD-based TV.
Prioritize mini-LED. And remember, brands like TCL and Hisense are making it more affordable.
Perfect. And then if you're aiming for truly exceptional, step-up picture quality.
That's when you start looking seriously at OLED. Even standard WOLED is going to look amazing.
It really will. And finally, for the absolute best of the best picture quality available right now.
You're looking at QD OLED or those new four-stack OLEDs.
Keeping in mind they might cost more and might not come in the absolute giant sizes. Yeah.
Technology always marches on. Fantastic. I definitely feel way less lost in the acronym jungle now. Hopefully everyone listening does too.
Yeah, hopefully that clears things up. It's just about knowing what the terms mean so you can match the tech to what you actually want from a TV.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of 2025 TV technology. Hope this helps you navigate the options and find the perfect screen.
It's a great time to buy a TV, honestly.
Yeah.
The technology across the board is pretty impressive now.
It really is. Thanks for tuning in to Byte-Sized Tech. If you enjoyed the episode, like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun tech discussions.
See you next time.